Exciting day. Nick Nelson from TwinsDaily is here to talk Carlos Correa, the shortstop market, starting pitching market, maybe some trades, the current roster. So much coming up on today's episode of Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Minnesota Twins podcast. It's Thursday, December 8th. I'm your gracious host, Nash Walker, here with Nick Nelson from TwinsDaily.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Nickel, he's back. I think it's been 2 years. Honestly.
It's been way too long. We used to do the Offseason live, and we had a good steady thing going. And yeah, well, it's good to be back on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. And I know everybody's going to be excited about this. I remember when you came on, I thought of Offseason Live, and I was like, I remember you sitting there in Offseason Live.
We've had some requests. We've had some requests for Offseason Live. People miss it, man. We might have to try to get some episodes fired up at Twins Daily again.
Jeopardy, Offseason Live. So fun. Nick has been in Arizona, but I know following along with free agent craziness in San Diego at the winter meetings. Nick, right now, I know it kind of fluctuates, and your feeling on this, I know throughout the offseason, at least I'm judging based on Twitter, has been kind of skepticism with Carlos Correa. Where do you stand today? Your feeling on Carlos Correa, not just with the Twins, but like his free agency overall?
Yeah, I think, the skepticism is still there. It's lessened over the course of time, just naturally with the Twins hanging in this thing. I mean, how can we not consider the very real possibility that they are very legitimately serious and hanging in there at a number that is far beyond, I think, what most of us would have even hoped they would, consider to be on their radar at the beginning of the offseason. They're pushing hard. Can they keep up with the Giants and whoever else might still be in play at this time? Still a little hard to believe just when you think about sort of the realities and history of this franchise. But it's interesting to follow, and it's, you can't ignore the fact that they've gotten this far.
We watched a full season of Carlos Correa, obviously know him from his Houston days as well. Nick, would you offer Carlos Correa $300 million? And maybe more importantly, the flip side of that is that going to be enough? Because it's so hard to even fathom the Twins giving him $300 million. But if you were Derek Falvey and Thad Levine today, would you offer $300 million? And do you think that number will be enough?
Well, with the caveat, of course, that it's not my money, I would happily offer that amount of money. When I think about it through the Twins sort of lens and how they evaluate and think about these things, I wrote an article last week at Twins Daily sort of offering up a contract framework that I thought would make sense, in order to maybe get Correa to choose a lesser total amount than he might get offered by the Giants or who have you, where maybe you front load the contract in those first 4 or 5 years and then include an opt out that would allow him to, if he's very strong in those early years, opt back out and then get even more money than we would have gotten on this deal. But still make it like a 10-year deal, maybe where it cuts down to like 30-25 in the latter half. Because I think that's what the Twins are really afraid of, right? They're not scared to pay Carlos Correa $35 million in the short term per season. It's those years down the line. You see Bogarts and Turner both get 11-year deals. You're going to be signing Correa into his late 30s at $30+ million. You can see why they would sort of move away from that. So I think the key lies in finding a framework that sort of minimizes the inhibiting nature of such a deal. And I think maybe front loading it and giving Correa a chance to opt out after making a bunch in those early years is maybe the path to doing it.
Here's what we got. It's right in the middle of our screen on YouTube.
This is wow, look at how prepared you are.
Year by year, it's $40 million over the first 4 years, then a player option, then $30 million over 3 years, another opt-out, $25 million over the final 3 years. I thought that was very interesting, definitely. And I think looking like at a structure like this, I agree. Like it feels like in the back end, you have less of that risk. If he's only making $25 million in those final 3 years, it makes sense. And for him, he gets those opt-out opportunities. I agree. I think that makes sense. Nick, we heard on Monday, Dan Hayes dropped a little report, little scoop, little leak. Maybe the Twins are open to trading Luis Arraez. And I think for people who follow the team daily, like this isn't a huge surprise given what we know about the roster, but like a casual Twins fan who loves Luis Arraez, and we do too, might be thinking like, why would they trade Luis Arraez? How do you feel about trading Luis Arraez, Nick?
I'm very on board with it. I know people don't like to hear it. I've got a lot of pushback, even just from bringing up the idea on Twitter before even some of today's rumors started to really boil up. I understand that people are opposed to it generally for two reasons. One of them being that they just love the Luis Arraez experience, which who among us don't, right? I mean,
Right.
baseball is not all about performance; it's about enjoying what you watch, liking the players you root for. They don't come much more likable than Arraez, and that's obviously tough to part with. But I think other people, they see him as an indispensable part of this lineup, which I also get. Arraez brings that OBP skills, that contact hitting ability, that sort of top of the lineup spark plug that really they'd be missing a lot, no question. So, an idea that I threw out there today that I think would make a lot of sense if they go the route of trading Luis Arraez and they miss out on Correa and Rodon is to take some of that free agency money and turn and use it on Brandon Nimmo, who frankly brings all of those skills to the table that we're talking about from Arraez. Is a much better player than Arraez objectively. Yeah. I mean, he's a great outfielder who can play center field, a lefty swinging outfielder who'd be a nice sort of platoon guy with Buxton. You can give him days off or DH. Nimmo's a very good center fielder. So if they do something like that to offset the loss, which would make a lot of sense to me, I think that's kind of a 1-2 punch you could use. Then I'd be okay with it. I just think what we saw this year, as great as it was unless you think that Luis Arraez is going to just have this complete evolution as a player here at 26 or 27, which seems unlikely to me, I just feel like we saw the absolute maximum peak of what he's going to be able to do. I mean, there were enough hits dropping in, getting enough singles to lead the league in average. That's not always going to happen. Even the year before, he hits 290 and he's much less valuable. So I just feel like if you can get another team to really buy into that, he was an all-star, he was a batting champ. He got the Gold Glove nomination, which probably had more to do with people being impressed with him going to first base and being capable at a position he's never played, as opposed to being truly excellent. I think if you can really get someone to buy into that steam, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, depending on what you get back.
It's so interesting because there's like this part of me that feels that way, and then the other part of me is like, oh no, he's so important to this team. Like he's a spark plug. They need him at the top of the lineup. That Nimmo idea is intriguing, and I thought about Michael Brantley in the same scope. But if you were to add a Nimmo, that maybe makes Trevor Larnach or Alex Kirilloff or obviously Max Kepler more dispensable in a trade for a starting pitcher, which is something to think about. Jorge Polanco and Luis Arraez have the same amount of team control. Like Jorge Polanco's, with that extension, 3 more years. Luis Arraez in the ARB process, 3 more years. Polanco a little bit more expensive, but you get club options. I think on the last 2. Starting next year, I think it's club options in 2024. But Nick, if it was Pablo Lopez or a frontline starter or a different player came and said, hey, it's your choice, like Jorge Polanco or Luis Arraez, who would you choose out of those 2 to trade away?
I think I would have to go with Arraez just because, I mean, you are getting that, you're getting that buy high experience, which I don't think you're getting from Polanco, just because he didn't really have that great of a season. He was hurt at the end of the year. I think he's more of sort of a defensive fit, a guy that is very good at second, a guy who you could theoretically play at shortstop. I don't think they want to anymore. Arraez, I don't really like him at second. I don't like him at third. He's pretty good at first. He's a fine DH. To me, the defensive fit thing is what's really tough, especially because at first base, he's just not a huge standout offensive performer. Other teams maybe wouldn't be as bothered by that, but the Twins have so many guys coming up who are sort of in that ambiguous, vague defensive profile, like Austin Martin, like Edouard Julien. So I just think when you look at the depth of this organization, Arraez is the guy that it makes more sense to part with at this time.
That's from Nick at Night, everybody on YouTube. Nick at Night. He's in the dark. If you're listening on the podcast, just know he went from light to dark. And he's
I'm back. Yeah, my light that I have going is very janky.
Yeah, Nick at Night. No, this is just Nickelodeon during the day here.
Nick at Night. Wow, that was a great, clever play in the moment
there. So, Nick, I know you were in Arizona. I don't know if you saw the figures on all of these guys, but I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you one free agent who's signed, Taijuan Walker, Jameson Taillon, Wilson Contreras, Trey Turner, big group, not everybody, of course, but who's one free agent and deal like attached to said player you would have liked for the Twins, who's off the board
now? That's a good question. There's none of them that I've been like, wow, I really want that. I mean, obviously the numbers have been coming in very high, probably higher than people expected. I think most people were kind of expecting high numbers just as we sort of catch up from all the pandemic stuff and, sort of account for some of these new revenue deals that are coming in. So, I mean, I guess maybe like Bogarts. I don't really like the length on that deal, but the rate is something you can live with.
How about Abreu 3 at 60? Because I know we both were. I mean, I was interested and you wrote about him as well. So how about Abreu on that deal?
Yeah, that's a good call. Arraez probably would be the one, just because I mean I had sort of 2 and 40 in mind. I mean, this is adding on another year and 20, which is not great for a guy that age. But as we're discussing here, it costs a lot to get free agents,
Right.
and as we're seeing with some of these deals we're talking about, Correa, Bogarts, Turner, you're just going to have to deal with whatever comes on the back end. That's the nature of the beast.
Late last night, Xander Bogaerts, 11 years. Is that what it was? $275 million to San Diego. Absolutely absurd. Nick and I were in San Diego, so that environment is I have no words for the city. I thought the city was just unreal. I know you did too, but that ballpark, like that, it's gonna be nuts there. That's gonna be so much fun, and you can see they make a lot of money there too. So I
Right.
know people are comparing, like, why don't the Twins spend like the Padres? It's like I don't think they understand the atmosphere there. It's just incredible. It was unreal.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the Padres are sort of an example, a model that a lot of Twins fans and a lot of fans of other sort of mid-market teams would love to see their
Oh,
own teams follow,
absolutely.
because San Diego is not a huge media market. I mean, it's much smaller than Minneapolis, quite honestly. So this is really a case of ownership stepping up and saying, and AJ Preller, who's their GM, who is Mr. Aggressive, stepping up and saying, we're going to just do what it takes to bring in super premium talent and try to win. And, I mean, I get that people are like, well, the Padres could do it. Why can't the Twins? Well, why can't anyone? I mean, I would love to
Right.
see more teams move in that direction, but what they're doing, I know, is baffling a lot of people, like even around baseball. Like, what is what is their plan? They're going to lose so much money, but maybe that's not the biggest deal in the world.
Nick, what does your offseason plan look like now? I know before, I think you had posted a couple that was like Abreu with Rodon that like didn't include Correa. Has any of that changed? And what does it look like now for you?
Um, I think my ideal still is going to be Correa and Rodon, to the extent that that's possible. I would be down to throw all the spending money at them basically and
Mhm.
figure everything else out on the fringes. I don't think that's very realistic. So in under the presumption that they miss out on both those guys, which is probably most likely, I think I like the idea of if there is a market for Arraez where you can get a pitcher of Pablo Lopez, who I've heard his name tossed around. I mean, he's on the fringe of a guy that's like good enough as an upgrade to the rotation to me. But if you can get someone with a Arraez led package, if you can make that move, turn around and spend some of that money to get Brandon Nimmo, ship Max Kepler out, so you don't have all that redundancy in the outfield. And if you can't get a trade with Arraez, then maybe it's about turning and finding a Nathan Eovaldi or maybe an Andrew Heaney, who I think would be a great fit with the Twins' philosophy. So I think there's still some interesting options, but if they can't get Correa or Rodon done, it's going to be really hard to have that slam dunk deal that sort of energizes the fan base coming off a tough year.
Both Boras clients. We'll see how that plays out. It's just so that to me is like, wow. When they're all at the same age, I'm like, how does he manage all that? How does he leverage everybody? It's crazy. We'll see. I don't
Well,
know.
it's funny because back in the day, I mean, I remember a time, this was probably before your time, young man, but there used to be a time when a Scott Boras client was someone that every Twins fan automatically ruled out as a target for the team
Mm,
because he had the big money clients. He was Scott
right.
Boras. He didn't even talk to the Twins. Now it's like an advantage for a guy to be a Boras client because they have such a working relationship with them multiple times, which is something that I mentioned in another TwinsDaily article. Boras has had a lot of these clients that the Twins have waited out and signed late in the offseason. And there's some guys like that this year. JD Martinez is a name that comes to mind, a guy who could sort of linger in the offseason and be in that value range for the Twins. So I think that's another interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Boras was talking the other day, and he was talking about how much young talent the Twins have. I don't know if this is a grain of salt because all those guys are his clients, like Royce Lewis and
Yeah, he's like
Kirilloff.
Royce Lewis, best player of all
I don't know,
time.
he's like
They got such good prospects.
Alex Kirilloff. I'm like, we haven't seen it. I mean, I believe in him, but we haven't seen it. Those are his clients. But Nick, do you believe? Because I do think that this is a factor in all of this with Correa, with Rodon. Do you believe the Twins have a bright future? Because if you look at San Francisco right now, there's question marks, and there's question marks with the Twins too. But undeniably, to me, the Twins have a clear path to the postseason in the AL Central. I do think a factor in this is what's coming, what they have now. How would you answer that question?
I think they're in great position. I mean, I really do. I'm higher on the talent in this organization than a lot of people. I really feel like injuries wiped them out. We saw what was coming together in the first half of last year, and it was a very good team. A flawed team, but a team that was well on its way to being a legitimate contender. The injuries just totally derailed it. Hopefully, obviously, those injuries in a lot of cases are still something to worry about, but they continue to fill the pipeline. I think they got super lucky having Brooks Lee drop to them last year, and now getting the number 5 pick out of nowhere in next year's draft. They're going to get 2 premium talents. And this front office has shown an ability to go get guys who can move through the minors pretty quickly. So I feel pretty confident, but it's all going to hinge for the most part, I think, on that pitching development pipeline, which we really still haven't quite seen pay off. And I think that's going to be the big question that needs to be answered in 2023. Are free agents buying into it? Are the Twins willing to go out and supplement it? That's going to be what probably Correa and others are going to need to see.
It feels like the Twins are going to need to win the intangible battle with Carlos Correa. Hey, we got your friends. We got a better farm system. You like Minnesota. I don't know at the end of the day how much he's going to leave on the table to join the Twins. What do you think? I mean, it's so easy as a Twins fan to think, oh, he'll do it. He wants to be here. What do you think in reality? Like, is he leaving 30, 40 million on the table to come back?
I couldn't see a scenario where he takes a deal that is not as good to him to come here. I could see a scenario like I mentioned where he considers deals sort of equal. Like, okay, San Francisco's offering 360 over 11. Twins are offering this front-loaded deal over 9, where he sees an opportunity to play well and gain even more money, and then that sort of shifts him over to the Twins. Like, I'll leave the guaranteed money, I'll bet on myself, and I'll go to a place that I know I like, a place that I know I can stand out, and get the accolades that continue to raise my profile.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. I don't know when he's going to sign. I don't know if it's going to be in the next couple of weeks, if it's going to be in January. Nick, you said you're feeling good about the talent on this team. I think it's not hard to see it going well, not only in 2023, but like moving forward, if they just have better health and Royce Lewis and Kirilloff and everybody stays healthier. What do you think today the strength of the 2023 Twins is? Because usually in recent years, it's been the offense. Every year, it's like the lineup. The lineup's the strength. I don't know if I could say it's the lineup today.
Honestly, going into at this very point, it might be the bullpen. They got Duran, they got Jax, who I just saw a tweet of him at some academy throwing 100 miles an hour the other day. They've got Lopez, who I think we all hope and expect to turn around. They've got Alcala coming back. They've got Thielbar. I mean, they've got a pretty stacked bullpen without any additions even being made to it. And you talked earlier about sort of what are some other offseason paths they could take. I mean, that's another interesting thing to me, where I know they don't love throwing money at free agent relievers. I don't either. But if they get later in this offseason, they've got all this money sitting around, maybe you want to go get like a Craig Kimbrell or sort of one of these top names out there and, add them into the mix and really just kind of focus on having a power bullpen, which in my opinion jibes really well with what this team likes to do from sort of a pitching strategy standpoint.
You can win a lot of games with that. And there are some higher upside, Zach Britton, Craig Kimbrell, higher upside relievers who are on the free agent market. Not a Aroldis Chapman, but he is a free agent. So he's out there. What do you think is the main weakness of the Twins, Nick? Without Correa, it's probably that star power. You're just missing like somebody who can take over a game. I know Byron can be that guy. You just can't rely on him to be that guy for 120 games. So what do you think is the main weakness?
Yeah, I think it's the lineup, honestly. If you're losing Correa, which we're considering in this scenario since he's a free agent, Buxton's a great hitter. Who else in this lineup is a really proven great hitter? There's not too many. Polanco but wasn't that amazing last year. Kirilloff has the ability, sure. But we haven't really. Miranda could have a sophomore slump. He was solid. He wasn't incredible as a rookie, I don't think. So it's like, where are the big hitters if Correa's leaving? And that's why I think that adding another big bat, whether it's going out for a guy like Nimmo, finding a guy like JD Martinez, that's why I love the idea of going and getting Jose Abreu. So I think they need to, there's a chance this lineup, if people are healthy, could be good. You get rebounds from Kirilloff and Larnach and Polanco, and maybe some of these prospects come up and start doing their thing. But I find it hard to look at this offense and see one that's going to carry a pitching staff that will probably be at best pretty good.
Who's your early 2023 breakout pick? We saw some. They're usually always out of the blue. Like they're random. Bailey Ober coming out of nowhere in 2021. Jorge Polanco honestly had an amazing 2021. This year, Miranda was great for those first couple of months. Griffin Jax was a breakout in 2022. Guys you don't really see coming, obviously, Yohan Duran. But who's your breakout pick, Nick? It doesn't have to be a prospect. It doesn't have to be somebody who's not on the team. It can be somebody who's currently on the roster who maybe breaks out again or breaks out for the first time.
I'm gonna say Austin Martin. I think he'll rebound from a really tough year in the minors. He'll build off that momentum of a great Arizona Fall League. He's a versatile defender who can play a bunch of different positions and bring some speed and bring some energy to the table that the Twins would love. If he wouldn't have had such a tough season, he would have probably gotten several chances this past season. Just bounce back from it. He's still pretty early in his pro career, so You're going to have some challenges that you need to learn from and get past. And I think he will. He's super talented. And he brings, it's another, I think I mentioned, he's one of those guys that to me makes, not that I would ever say Arraez is simply expendable, but he provides some redundancy. He's got a lot of the same skill set as Arraez, that low power, high contact, top of the lineup kind of guy who can play a few different positions.
He's a wild card in the system now because I feel like Brooksley is going to be a pretty good ball player. You never want to put that stamp, but I think he's going to be good. Royce Lewis healthy, still a little bit of a question mark because of the health, strictly it feels like. But I think Austin Martin's a wild card. Like if Austin Martin develops and he becomes an everyday, really good regular, I think that's going to go a really long way for this team.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Who do you view, Nick? We'll finish with this today. I know throughout the season, it was always the White Sox. It was like, oh, they're coming. They're going to go on this run. It's coming. And it never came. They did have some stretches where they played well, but Cleveland just ran away with it in September. Long term, Cleveland just signed Josh Bell. We know like Andres Jimenez and Oscar Gonzalez and Steven Kwan, the rookies, great years or early year guys. I think that was Jimenez second or third year. But who do you view as the more of a long-term threat? Is it Cleveland or Chicago in the Central?
I mean, it depends on, is what Cleveland just did a sign of things to come? Are they actually going to spend a little money to improve their ball club? The way they develop players, the way they churn out these pitchers, it's hard to doubt them until someone knocks them off. I mean, the White Sox are starting to make some changes. I don't think they've been run very well over the past few years. So at this point, I'd have to go with Cleveland. I think it looks like they're actually going to maybe, they're getting a new ownership guy in place, and maybe they're going to start changing some of these habits. It's been hard to watch them with so much core talent do so little to add to it, but maybe that'll turn around. I'm not as down on the White Sox as everyone. It's kind of wild to me how low like the projection systems are on them, because they still have a lot of like star caliber players, but they've been ravaged, and they are kind of moving to that stars and scrubs situation with some financial inflexibility arriving as a result of some of these contracts. So I would go with Cleveland.
It's not always good to extend everybody. A lot of times it is, but sometimes you see the flip side, and it's what's happening a little bit in Chicago. I agree. You should see, I don't know if you follow, I think you started following White Sox fans this year, but the White Sox fans I follow are down on this group.
Oh yeah.
Down on this group. But the vibes were just so bad. Like I understand that. The vibes were so bad, and I don't know. I mean, maybe they bounce back. I agree with you, though. I think probably a little bit too low on the White Sox. Should be an interesting offseason. Nick, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I promise next time it's not going to be a 2-year gap. So it's not going to be a 2025 podcast appearance. He's going to come back when Correa signs.
I'm starting my watch.
When it's Carlos squared, Nick's going to come back and break it all down for us. Nick, thank you. Have a good night, my friend, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Nash.